Hey, hi everyone, welcome to FTO Friday. This is a series where I go over tips and tricks and advice on solving FTO and all things FTO basically. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can set up your FTO, how you can adjust tensions and how you can reliably adjust tensions so that you're accurate. Because the easiest way to adjust the tension, shove the screwdriver in until you can feel that it's stuck in the screw and then turn. Okay. However, sometimes people have a screwdriver that doesn't fit. They don't realize it, so they try and shove it. They try and shove it in, and then when they go to turn, they can't tell if they've got it in or not. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pop out one triangle. I like to pull, so like have the face, the triangle that I'm trying to pull over here, do like half an R prime, like a third of an R prime, and then try and pull this piece out. Now I'm trying to be careful because I was trying to film this earlier and the whole thing exploded. So you probably won't have too much difficulty getting the whole thing apart. Let's grab the screwdriver that doesn't fit first. And I've got the flash on my phone so that I can show the screw in here. This is normally easily visible without the flash. Like in most light you can see it. So kind of here, it's a little bit out of focus. But basically, as I try and turn and get the screwdriver in, it kind of skips. That's because this is the wrong size. If you find that as you're turning in the screw, it kind of is bouncing and skipping along, it's not the right size. So when I jam this in properly, as I turn it, the screw turns with, and there's no extra movement of the screwdriver and not the screw, okay? So I can see here, for example, that one of the lobes, that's what they're called, of the screwdriver is facing basically towards this corner. So I know if I turn like this until another lobe is facing it, I've turned exactly 90 degrees, or give or take. If I go halfway on that turn, so that I'm in the space between lobes, that's 45 degrees. This is important because if you've got equal tension on every face, then when you change this face by 90 degrees, you want to change everything else by 90 degrees in the same direction. So in that case, I was turning clockwise. Once you've done the white face, do, I guess, well, it doesn't really matter. Let's do an R prime, say. And we're going to tension the green face. We're going to do all faces around this corner first. So you do the green face. I haven't actually done a full R prime to see the screw more easily. And I jam a screwdriver in, and then I do exactly the same distance as previously. So pay attention to where the lobe is facing and then turn it until it's the right distance. And as you're coming back on this arm move, so you've done these two now, before you go past this triangle, just click it into the spot. The magnets will help, and then fully align the puzzle and pop your screwdriver in there. And again, you can see where the lobe is pointing and then make your turn. So undo that so you've got the triangle in line, and then this can be a little bit fiddly, but just tip that triangle back in place. And then for the red face, just do a slight turn on the purple face. That makes enough room for this triangle. And then exactly the same thing. I always like to have the screwdriver on the left because I'm left-handed. There's no right or wrong way to do it, just so that you can see more easily. You can see here I'm not quite in the screw. I'm not quite deep down enough. I've missed it. So you've got to just look carefully and make sure you're definitely in the screw before you start turning. Once I've done those four faces, and I've made sure that I've done the same amount on all of them, replace the triangle you removed. So in this case it clips under here. I felt an edge starting to come out on that one, hence the tension. And then we're going to flip this over so that we've got the other four remaining faces, and exactly the same thing. I like to pop out the yellow triangle here. You don't have to. That's just my preference because I popped out white and yellow is opposite. So then same on there. Do most of an R move, R prime, sorry. Tension the blue face. Come back up. Pop the orange triangle. Tension that one. Pop the triangle back. And then do sort of an L move. Pop out this grey triangle. Tension this one. Put the triangle back. Realign the puzzle. And then replace this triangle. One thing to make it easier to put the triangle in, I find, is perform a half turn on the face with the corner that's going to meet this triangle. So in this case, this one, we're doing, that's 60 degrees because this is an FTO, so each turn is 120 degrees, not 90. And as I'm putting this in, I'm trying to hook this one underneath the edge, and then I'm focusing on trying to push this part of the edge piece. Oh, I'll bring it closer for you. Trying to bring this part of the edge piece underneath this of the triangle. Sorry, edge. This little bit of the triangle underneath that edge piece. After I got the first one in, so I'm kind of tilting the triangle underneath like that, rather than trying to just jam it in straight down. I'm trying to persuade it in, and then that will be your puzzle freshly tensioned. So to dismantle your FTO, you don't need to unscrew anything, but you can. Depends if you're setting the whole thing up or if you're just checking some pieces. One of the ways, the joke answer, is to just do solves, because the pieces will eventually pop out. But another way to do it is pop out one of the triangles like this, and then if you turn one of the faces, you can probably scoop another triangle out more easily, and then scoop another, and then scoop the last. And now this corner's free to come out. What is nice about the Diansheng is the pieces are magnetic. So whenever I dismantle an FTO, I like to put all of the triangles attached to the corners, and then repeat that same process for another corner. So I'm tilting down, I'm pulling on this upper left part of the triangle, and I'm pulling in that direction as I do it. So I'm tilting the piece, and then when you've got nice big blank spaces like this, they just come out so easily. And again, maybe this is a little bit extra, but I like to keep the pieces together as a group so that when I'm pulling everything apart, let's actually try taking it from here. When I'm pulling it apart, or rather, sorry, when I'm putting it back together, I like to have them all easily identifiable, and the magnets certainly facilitate that. So all of those guys are there. They're my little troop of the white center, and then I'll do the same for the yellow center. And the point is that when I put the puzzle back together, I prefer to put it back together solved, because then I don't have to take it apart, put it back together, take it apart, put it back together. None of that rubbish. Just dismantle it, remantle it, reassemble, sorry, in one go. Once you're at this point, you can just pull the edges out. Like, the Diansheng has no anti-pop mechanism, so the edges will just come out very freely and easily. But I mean, yeah, I literally just tugged them out and they'll pop out. There's not really much finesse to that. I will finish taking this one apart. I'm not going to set this one up because it's basically done. But eventually I will have to take it apart so that, so that I can give it the treatment of the 3D printed anti-pop kit. Okie dokie, so here I'm going to show you how to set up, or rather put together, assemble and set up your Diansheng FTO. So for starters, the lubricant that I normally use is Traxxas 50K. I was running a bit short and I needed to make a cubicle purchase, so I bought the equivalent, which is cubicle weight 5. Traxxas 50K is better bang for your buck because you get a much larger amount of the stuff for a cheaper price, and they're pretty much the same oil. So I would recommend Traxxas 50K. The one advantage that the cubicle weight has is that it is in one of these lovely syringe tube type thingies, which makes it just a tiny bit easier to apply. Now with weight 5, you have a bit more control because it's very high viscosity, which is nice. So here we have springs, the screws, the core, centerpieces, and then you'll notice I've laid out the triangles are attached to the corners. They're all magnetized, obviously, because it's a Diansheng. This is a forced Diansheng that Jake Brown set up for me. If you want to see an unboxing of that, I'll link it. I'm changing the springs back, although I do prefer the stronger springs in the Diansheng, the alternative springs. My RSI is getting pretty bad at the moment, so instead I'm opting for the lighter springs. Even though I don't like the feeling as much, it doesn't hurt me as much. And I think that's a priority, really. Okay, so in order to set up a puzzle, you need, well, in order to put it together, you need a screwdriver. You need a screwdriver that fits the screws specifically. You need the lubricant that you're going to use, obviously the puzzle, and a bit of paper towel. This is to wipe your hands on or wipe any pieces or anything, if you get too much stuff. Let's start by getting the springs and the core ready. So get one of your springs and put it on a screw. Then this is important. Place it into your center. Put the screwdriver into the screw and creep your hand up the screwdriver and hold the centerpiece and pull it so you've fully compressed the spring. So this is all stationary now. You're holding all of this still. Grab the core and then turn the core gently onto the screw rather than turning the screwdriver. If I just turn on the flash briefly, we might get a better visual. I'm going to now turn this center until I get to the end of the thread. So the threaded part is that spiral pattern on the screw. You can see here we've got two sections, the threaded section and the not threaded section. So I'm tightening it until all of this is in the core. And the point is that I'm going to have even tensions at that point. That's the whole idea, is that I want all of my tensions to be the same. Now, I've demonstrated that to you first because now what we're going to do is lubricate these parts. Sometimes the springs have an orientation that's correct. I don't believe these do. What we're going to do is, I'm actually going to turn off flash for this bit, is apply lubricant to the spring. A generous amount. Don't be shy. Put loads on. Get it all over your fingers. Don't be scared of it. Silicone is completely harmless. I wouldn't recommend drinking it, but it's really nothing dangerous on your fingers or anything like that. Get a healthy dose on there and spludge. Squidge it all in. You can hear that kind of gummy sound. That's what we want. Grab that piece and then again go all the way to the end of the threaded part. You don't need to be forceful. It doesn't require any force at all. And if it does, just double check that you've got the screw in to the hole straight, because that could be an issue there. I must admit, I'm not used to using the syringe, so my control may be a little bit all over the place with this. But it really doesn't have to be anything pretty. Just cover the hardware in lubricant. So the point of using weight 5 is that it's a high viscosity lubricant and lasts a while as long as you put lots on. And we want high viscosity on our hardware, that is screws and springs, because those are the parts that are moving the most and will have a lot of turning force applied to them, because the moment is going to be, it doesn't matter. The point is that basically they're going to be spinning loads and they're going to have to endure quite a lot of movement. So it's nice to have a high viscosity lubricant because, one, it lasts for a long time and you don't have to keep taking apart the puzzle to redo it. And two, I find it just responds better. You don't feel high viscosity lubricant when it's in the center, no matter how much you put in, really. It doesn't feel like too much. So this next bit I'll speed up and then we'll be back to you when I've finished putting these in. Okay, that's all done. Something to point out is that sometimes people will try and lubricate the centerpiece instead of the spring. The reason I don't do that, especially for FTO, is there's basically no space to put the syringe or bottle in. Apologies for the buzzing fly. So I just completely cover the springs, and that's where I want the lubricant anyway, is the contact points at the top and bottom of the spring. So if there's a bit, along the length of the spring, that's fine, because it will gradually find its way down the spring. And that's also why I put in far too much lubricant, is because it's going to need, it's not all going to be exactly where you want it. Okay, so you'll notice there's this circular flat part that kind of goes around the middle of the core. And that basically means we can differentiate between half of the centers. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are on pointing upwards, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 are pointing downwards. Right now, this is way too loose. I don't care who you are, this is too loose right now. The edges will just keep falling out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten every single one of these 2 full turns, 2 whole turns, which is 720 degrees. So I'll get the first one, I'll pay attention to where the lobe is. So right now, this one is facing me in the writings at the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 whole turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a second whole turn. The focus is not there, but that doesn't matter. And then I'll repeat it for all of the centers that are facing up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. And then also I'm turning this clockwise. That's quite important. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. By the way, each of these lobes, there's only 4 lobes on this screwdriver head, this Phillips head screwdriver. So each time a new lobe appears in the position of the previous, that was 90 degrees, which is why I'm counting 8 of them. Okay, so this is now slightly tighter, and they should all be the same tension as well, which it looks pretty good. These two look looser, actually. I'm not 100% sure how this has happened. Yeah, the others look good, but upon visual inspection, there's a pair of centers where I can see the shoulder when I shouldn't be able to. So this is where it gets a little bit trickier, as with more experience, I can gauge roughly how tight and how far into the core some of these centers are. So I'm going to tighten this one a tiny bit, and then check. That looks about even. That's good. These are a tiny bit too tight compared to those. Happy with that. Yeah. You're too tight. Your partner's too loose. Let's try that. That's good. You again, a bit looser, a bit tighter. So these two, yeah. You shouldn't need to do this if you got the first step perfect, but apparently I did not, and that's fine. So something like that. I reckon that's pretty much even now. Again, it doesn't have to be perfectly 100% even. Whoopsie. Just knocking my camera stand. Okay, so now that we've got them roughly even, I'm going to put some edges in. You'll notice here that I've got all the edges sort of dotted around corner pieces. I'm just going to grab a corner piece and then get all of the edges that go around it. And I'm just going to put those in. So fix this one between. Now this is feeling very, very loose, so I probably will want to tighten it yet again. 90% of tensions on this puzzle are too loose, and the other 10% are too tight. So, you just have to keep going for it. Okay. See, that just really doesn't want to sit at all. Okay, that's in. And then this one. Okay, so clearly the edges aren't staying in. I'm going to tighten everything another 360 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. flip it over, do the other sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try that again. The nice thing about having the corner laid out for me next to me is that I can double check where the different edges go. You don't have to do this. If you know your color scheme, it should be relatively easy to put together, but admittedly this is on an old color scheme that I don't use now. I don't main it, so oh my god. The Diansheng is not the easiest puzzle in the world to put together. Once you've got a few of the pieces in, the Diansheng edges actually have magnets in them. So you can basically load up a bunch of these guys like this and then place the remaining edges. You do need to put some edges in first though. Diansheng's assembly tutorial basically teaches to put all the edges in first. I hate doing that because I don't want to risk things flying out like they do here. So I try to put in some triangles to help things stay together. Doesn't always work, just because it's a shell mech. So there are times where the edges kind of help each other. Oh, come on now. I know you can do it. Yes. Okay, so that's all in with the triangles and corner. And then we just place in our next edge piece. And looking at this, why don't we build this corner next? So there's our pink and blue. Now pink and red in place. Lovely. Now don't try and shove the whole cluster in like this necessarily. I like to try and do that, see how many pieces I can get in, but it's really not necessary. Put in a couple of triangles like this. Put the corner in. You'll notice I'm putting a lot of my hands and fingers and digits on top of quite a few of these pieces. That's so that they don't go flying, basically, because this puzzle loves to pop. Okay, that's our second corner in, and then there's our last corner. So install our edges. There's not really any right or wrong way to do this. I think the wrong way would be if everything exploded as you did it. So I guess try and avoid that. Come on. Okay. Another thing is to try and avoid the puzzle turning while you're trying to put it together. Okay, so there's those in. Now, if I were to just turn this face on its own, that feels roughly right, maybe a little bit loose. So I'm pretty happy with that. We'll just install the last 3 edges. Something to note is that there's 2 parts of this piece. This bottom part and this part, they clip underneath the centers. So hook one under the top and then push on the bottom part of the edge here, and that will just pop underneath, nice and comfortable. So I reckon I could squeeze in 3 triangles maybe. Can I pull that off? No, it won't let me. Okay, right, we'll put in those. There you go. So you can do it, but you don't need to. It is quicker, but it's not necessary. So you can do them one at a time. What I tend to find is easiest is putting in 3 triangles, and then the corner, and then the last triangle afterwards. Now, obviously you want to be careful not to cause an explosion and make pieces come out. So take your time, there's no rush. I'm going quickly, but you don't have to. There we go. And then for the final triangle piece, you turn the face with the corner that meets this triangle, turn it 60 degrees, and then place it so that these wingy bits, one of them goes underneath the first edge, and then you're trying to tilt it and curve it so this one comes under the second. So we're doing this kind of motion like that. Okay, so that's the puzzle assembled. Now we have to check tension. And I find the easiest way to do that is just do an A-perm. This feels a little bit precarious, so everybody's going to get a good tension. So I will speed up the video as I do this part. Okay, so we have that tensioned pretty much how I want it. So now what I'm going to do is start adding the Angstrom Gravitas into this. And the way that I like to do it is I like to take out one whole kind of corner chunk like this. And then we're going to basically just use a very generous quantity of this stuff. Loads and loads and loads of it. So I'll turn on the flash for this bit to make it easier to see. I'm absolutely caking everything with this stuff. Loads of lubricant everywhere. Even on parts that don't really touch anything. So I'm doing it on the bases here, base of the edge piece, because this tiny bit, these bits here, the feet of the plastic will touch it. Then on every hexagonal surface. This puzzle eats through lubricant really quickly because of the hexagonal pattern. But by over lubing it like this, putting in more lube than you actually realistically need, allows you to then do loads and loads of solves, and it will all break in and be ready. Okay, so that's one part, and then basically the same thing all around the corner. So load it up on the face that touches the triangles by the magnet, and also on the corner sort of stalk and base. And I am putting absolutely loads on here. I've found that it works best when you put tons of the stuff on. Now you don't have to put this in this order, but I happen to do that corner first. And then on the triangle, same thing. Completely covering, just lathering it up like this. Loads and loads and loads. There's not really any science to this bit. I'm literally just whacking on tons and tons of lubricant on there, and also on this bit here. I've got a paper towel to hand nearby so that I don't get it all over my hands, and if I do, then I can wipe it off. You don't need to cover every single piece with loads and loads of lube, but you do need to cover the same number, at least a decent equally amount on separate orbits. So if I'm, oh my god, come on now. If I'm putting loads of lube on all the pieces in one orbit, but none on the pieces in the other orbit, then it's going to be super uneven. It's not going to break in properly. Because remember, on FTO, half the pieces don't scramble with each other. So you can't really break lube in if there's no pieces to actually pass over each other and move all that lube around. So yeah, you can see it's getting like a proper sticky mess now. But that's fine, that's intentional. Okay, a bit less on this one because we have got so much already. Wrong way round, let's go that way. Bit harder to get in this time because the puzzle is tighter and my hands are slippy. So then what I like to do, just a bunch of turns about the corner that I've just been doing until it starts to feel smooth and not too sluggish. Some of them will take a bit longer than others. Okay, that's a start. I'm going to go on the opposite side, but this time I'm going to do things a little differently. I'm actually going to take out an edge piece as well. So on the edge pieces, this little bit here with the holes, that touches the center pieces. So unfortunately that's going to get a large dollop of lube, but lots of it's going to go in the hole, which is very annoying. But you know, I can also brush up on all the center pieces in a given space. And actually I can turn over here like this, and then reveal another centerpiece. And just do that. Ooh. And this one, like so. What I sometimes also like to do is basically paint all of the surfaces that are visible with this stuff. So yes, this does use a lot of lube, but it will last ages as well. And especially on this one, which I'm not planning on using tons. You know, I'm not going to do most of my solves on this puzzle anyway, so that makes it last even longer. There's this one in here. Ooh. This puzzle does not like to stay together. And then putting the corner in. Actually, I'm going to put a load on here as well. Dollop on there and there and there. Just on any part that's going to be touching other pieces, basically. Loads of it. I'm sure lots of people have different preferences for how they set up their puzzle, but I really like the feeling of Gravitas when you've broken it in. So that's what we're using. Come on. There we go. So to check that we're happy with it, we just scramble up the puzzle. Some of the faces will turn slower than others because it's not fully distributed yet. I find the best way to break in lube is basically just scramble it, solve it, scramble it, solve it, rather than trying to do specific moves to break it in. Oh man, I'm not used to this color scheme now. I didn't need to do that. Not so good. Let's turn off the flash. Sure, let's blame the flash for this problem and not my poor quality of turning and look ahead. Right. Oh, also, because I've put so much lube in, every now and then the puzzle needs a bit of a wipe down because absolutely coated. My hands need a bit of a wipe down too. Alright. That was a weird way of doing it. Oh my god. This is terrible. Let's see if we can get one that's not shocking. Maybe I should look down the camera to do it. You know, weirdly that helped actually. It was kind of hurts my eyes to look down the screen, look down at the phone while I'm solving, but it kind of helped. Okay, so now that this is broken in a decent amount, you essentially just keep tweaking and improving. So I'm finding that, well, I was finding that the pieces were kind of running away from me a little bit. They were kind of a little bit too loose and too fast. But now that I put super heavy lube into it, it's not really running away with me quite as much. So maybe I would, I was going to say maybe I'll stick with that, but maybe actually I do still need it just a tiny bit tighter. It's kind of a tricky one to decide sometimes, because especially with this puzzle, there's always the risk of it coming apart. But hopefully the anti-pop fix will actually address that. Hopefully that kit will fix it. That's pretty much the puzzle done now. It's just a matter of doing lots of solves on it. So if you have any questions, just ask, and see you in the next one.